to an ACT Chess Association stream of their online events, which happen on leechess.org. We normally run them on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights. My name is Sean Press. I organise these events on behalf of the ACT Chess Association and produce this stream the day after the event. So the event we're looking at was played last night, 4th of October. It was a 9-round Blitz event with a time limit of 3 minutes plus 2 seconds per move. In the end, there was a small field. Blitz is not everyone's cup of tea, I suppose. And in fact, it was run as a round robin. So 10-player, 9 rounds, round robin. I was quite impressed, actually, by Leechess able to pair all the rounds. So we ended up getting through. Everyone got their full 9 games. It didn't bail out after 7 rounds. The winner was Harry Press, who scored 9 out of 9. And the game I'm featuring is one that was played by Harry, but isn't a high-quality game, but I'm choosing it for a specific reason. And one is that when we study tactics, often we get little snapshots of games. And we get, in this position, black or white will play a move. And this often happens in real-life chess as well, especially the higher you go in terms of the level. Often, most tactics don't actually happen at the board. They happen between the two players when they're analysing, and player 1 will set a trap or set a position where something could go wrong for the opponent. The opponent instead will look at the position, realise that something's about to go wrong, and play a different move. So in the end, we only often in a lot of games get to see one tactic, because that's the tactic that decides the game completely. Not in this case. This is a combination of cheap traps, dirty tricks, tactics that shouldn't work but do, tactics that should work and do, and I'll go all the way through. So it's all like maybe 6 or 7 tactical ideas all the way through this game. Be warned, it's not a great game. But let's start with the first move, d4. And I'm looking at it from black's point of view because black wins. And already we're playing what is essentially a dubious move with e5. Because after d takes e5, of course, king can't take on e5. So, do not adjust your set at home. I've flipped the board around. So it looks like a Scandinavian, but obviously it isn't. Now, this is the England Gambit, and I've been seeing kids play it recently because obviously they're picking some stuff up from YouTube. Disclaimer, I used to play it when I was a kid. And it's fun for a while, but there's just 1 or 2 big tricks for black, and after that, it just doesn't work. So the normal move here is knight c6, attacking the pawn, and knight f3, and then queen e7. And there are a couple of different moves to refute this opening. I've played queen d5, for example, in this position as white, but f6 can be slightly tricky as a response, because if you take the pawn, the knight takes hitting the queen, and so on and so forth. Bishop f4. Normally black gets quite excited when they see this move because of queen b4, and queen b4 does 3 things. 1, of course, it's a check. 2, it's attacking the undefended bishop. And 3, it's attacking the undefended pawn. So it looks like, oh, this is fantastic. And white can play knight c3 here in one line, but it does transpose after bishop d2. Queen takes, and then knight c3. Okay. There's another dirty trick based on playing bishop c3 to defend the rook. But after bishop b4 here, and the idea here is that, of course, I'm now going to take the rook because the bishop is pinned going in this direction. Black sometimes plays this move. White, sorry, plays this move. Black takes. And if we take with the knight, we lose the rook in the corner. So, of course, we play the queen taking to protect the rook in the corner. But we've overlooked queen C1 checkmate. I've won games like this, and lots of kids, when they see this trap, go, cool, I'm going to play this because it totally wins for black. But it doesn't. So, knight c3 instead. We're not going to play bishop c3. You play knight c3 here if you just want to, if you're white. Okay. And then normally black will follow up with knight b4. And the reason why knight b4 gets played is because you're hoping for the next trick, which is rook b1. Oh, what can be better than attacking the queen? Well, the problem is after knight takes c2 here, you note that the white king doesn't have any escape squares. And the only move that saves black, white from checkmate is queen takes, and you've just lost your queen. Okay, so we get to this position here, and now it's white's turn just to start to kick in. The first move you play is knight d4. It's protecting c2. So suddenly that trick has gone away. What do? Well, knight a6 is given as best, but after knight a6, e3, and then queen a3, all you've done is run your queen to b2 and then back to a3. Note you're not even won any material because you sacrificed a pawn in the opening, and white is just happily developing all their pieces. So you've essentially just wasted your opening. And this is why this opening is bad, is that if white doesn't fall for the tricks, right, you've wasted your time. And basically, there are only two tricks that white really has to watch out for, and they're easy to defend against. Instead, bishop c5 was played. Now, by the way, the game that I'm following here was actually played by Harry Press, who is black in this game and deliberately played this gambit. A week earlier, he was white and his opponent tried it on him, and he happily defended. So after bishop c5, which is a blunder, rook went over, queen here, knight here to attack the queen, back here and then here, and pretty much black is now just losing a piece because the knight on b4 is pinned and attacked a few times. And yeah, eventually white is going to pick that piece up, which is what happened in the game. So after that quick crash course in the garbage that is the mainline England gambit, black, Harry Press, played bishop c5. And he's got a different idea, which is equally terrible, but still, he went for it. Knight f3, okay. You can try knight c6 if you're going to play this in a slightly different way. But after knight c3, just a word of warning, don't play the queen e7, hey, it's just like the England gambit line again, because knight d5 is just nice here for white. Attacking the c7 pawn and the queen has to retreat, and you've kind of wasted a bit of time. So d6 with the idea of capturing here. Now, if black was serious about trying to play this vaguely normally, knight f6 is not a bad move here. Because there is a trick here, and that is if we keep going with d takes c7, bishop takes f2 just wins the queen. King takes, queen takes, yeah, and even though we get another queen down here, after knight check and the king retreats, rook here, and black is quite happily winning here. Two pieces and a pawn for the queen, but if you just have a look at white's position, the undeveloped pieces are actually going to cause a fair bit of trouble. Black's already threatening to take the bishop on c1, pawn on c2, for example. So, instead, black played an even more bizarre move. Black played knight e7 here. Okay, and this is just a terrible, terrible move. White can actually just play knight c3, c takes d6 and e4, and is better in this position. But as I said, this game is about tactics. Not very good tactics, but tactics nonetheless. And without too much thought, white just went, hey, free piece, can't work out what's going on here. And boom, bishop takes f2 landed on the board again. So this is our first real main tactic. So earlier on we were looking at forks and pins and that sort of stuff. So this is deflection. This tactic is called deflection. The idea is the king has a job of protecting the queen after the pawn took. But by taking on f2, the king has to do something else and can't stay protecting the queen. The king is forced to take the bishop because there are no other legal moves in the position, and it means the king is no longer defending the queen, at which point black took down here. So black is now up a queen. 4, as before, 2 minor pieces and a pawn. So if we're doing the count, it's 9 points for the queen versus 7 points for the various pieces of wood. So far, so good. Black is just simply better. After 6 moves, they've won a queen. It is a pretty dirty trap, if you ask me. So, if this was the rest of the game, I probably wouldn't be showing it. But there's some more tricks here. So we play knight c3, queen takes c2, g3, knight c6, rook b1. The reason for rook b1 is that white wants to bring the bishop out from c1, but would lose the b pawn straight away. So the rook comes across to defend. It is protected by the knight, and it means that the bishop on c1 can move out. Possibly better for reasons which will become clearer shortly. Bishop e6 to keep developing, because now you're kind of threatening the sneaky bishop takes a2. Because if bishop takes a2, knight takes a2, the knight is also deflected from defending the rook on b1, and the queen will just take. If I get my arrows right, the queen will just take the rook. So, knight takes e7. Okay, Bishop to f4, attacking the c-pawn, castles, bishop g2, right move here. And then black decided that they didn't want to lose the c-pawn, so they would play c6. c6 is a huge blunder, it turns. Well, not a huge blunder, but a big blunder, as it turns out, which both players missed. So on this diagram, I've put not all the escape squares, but most of the escape squares for the black queen, just in case, say, the rook goes to c1 to attack it. And the ones that are marked in red are protected by white's pieces. The two squares that aren't protected by white's pieces are f5 and g6. But this is what black and white missed. After knight h4, suddenly it turns out that there are no squares for that queen to move to. The queen's actually trapped now. And bishop e4 is coming. Imagine that black plays h6 with the hope of playing queen to h7, which is a pretty grubby move anyway. But after bishop e4, queen's trapped. Okay, queen takes b1, rook takes b1. And at this point, the position is slightly in favour of white, because white has two pieces for a rook. Okay, normally this works out. Note, if you try and win more material like this, you can run into trouble with a move like this. So, c6 turned out to be a bad move, but only in that if white had found knight h4. Instead, white found rook hc1, which, by the way, is a natural-looking move to drive the queen away, but of course the queen now gets back to g6 and is safe. So, a few more moves. Knight e5. We're attacking the queen. Nothing wrong with that. The queen moves here. Just got to be careful when you chase the queen around the board. Sometimes, or other pieces, sometimes you actually chase them to better squares. Knight goes back to d3, and we bring the knight over. So what black wants to do here is black actually would prefer less pieces on the board. As long as they keep their queen and they swap a few things off, that queen is going to become more powerful because it'll pick up loose pieces. But with lots of pieces on the board, actually the queen doesn't necessarily have enough squares to move to. Okay, knight. Again, we're chasing the queen around. The queen went back here to d8. And then this was a nice move. I didn't mind this move, bishop d6, because the rook is immobile for the moment. But after bishop f5, white's also under attack. I thought possibly the best idea here was e4, bishop g4, bishop takes, queen takes. And in this case, the gap between the material advantage and disadvantage has narrowed a little bit, in that it is 8 points for white, black, sorry, rook and knight. Black has queen and pawn, so it's 10 to 8. So it's a little bit closer than what happened in the game. Instead, black took, white took, black took, we take and we take. Okay, and the gap is still now 10 to 6 rather than 10 to 8 in terms of material. The main problem that white has, which is a little bit overlooked until now, is king safety. That king sitting on f2 is out in the open. You've got to always be careful when the king is in the open and there's a queen on the rampage, then you're walking into little queen forks. So when I said before that black would be better with less pieces on the board, after a few moves, there are less pieces on the board, and it turns out black is going to be a lot better here. So black grabbed the pawn, or white, sorry, grabbed the pawn down on b7, and black played the queen to b4. So we're attacking the knight for the moment, and the king is still out in the open. White thought they could grab a second pawn by capturing on c6 and protecting the knight at the same time. When I was looking at the game live, went queen b6 surely. Black didn't play queen b6, but set up a different finish. Okay, but here we're just king moves to safety, and you're losing the bishop on c6. Okay, knight a5, queen f6 here, king g2. And the material advantage is now 10 to 4 in favour of black. So, instead, after bishop takes e6, the knight went to e5, attacking the bishop. And I think maybe black had already seen what could happen in this position, especially after bishop g2. Okay. Knight g4 check, which is, I'm pretty sure, planned in advance. Okay, and we get our final tactic of the day, which is a smothered checkmate. Okay, so King G1 was played. Now, it turned out King E1 needed to be played, but I'm not sure that White saw what was coming here. Rook C8 is the follow-up, and the idea here is you're threatening to take on C3, because if the pawn on B2 captures, then the rook on B1 can just be taken for free. The only thing that Black really wants to do in this position at some point is just probably avoid some back rake checkmates by creating a bit of breathing space for the king, a H6 or a G6 in a position like this. So that if, for example, you're not paying attention, you don't get rooked down the back rank mating you. Instead, after knight G4, King G1, and it's forced mate in this position. But it's a good forced mate to learn if you haven't seen it before. Queen to D4 check. Okay. If the king goes to F1, Queen F2 straight up is mate. So we play King H1 here, and then you get knight check. King has to go back to G1, and then you play knight. H3 double check. You have to play this as a double check. This is really important for this mate. If the king goes to F1, Queen F2 is still mate. Note the bishop can't take the knight because you're under attack from the queen as well. So the king goes back to H1, and then Queen H1, Queen G1 here is the correct move. First time you see it, award yourself 2 exclamation marks, but it's been played so long and so often that it's just routine these days. By the way, this is called Philidor's Legacy if you're not familiar with the name. So Queen G1 check, Rook takes G1, Knight F2, and there's mate. Okay, king can't move, nothing can take the knight, we're completely surrounded. So that was played by Harry Press against Clyde Robbins last night in our online Blitz event. It was played with a time limit of 3 minutes plus 2 seconds. There were a succession of tactics all the way through. That's why I picked on the game today. It's not a great game, of course, especially if you're playing moves like Knight E7, D takes E7, But it does demonstrate some basic tactics here. And also in the line of the England Gambit, I am also showing you how to avoid the worst of it if you are white. So, thanks for tuning in. I normally do these summaries the day after. And tonight we've got a rapid tournament, 10 minutes plus 2 seconds per move. If you want to tune in for tomorrow's stream, I normally do them about 10 a.m. Canberra time. But until then, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you later.